All right. Well, hi, everybody. Looks like the numbers are still growing a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and get started because I got kind of a lot to cover today. Thank you for joining the Forestry Lunch Breaks. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Patrick Schultz. I'm the Extension Forester with Washington State University for Southwest Washington. So it's my job to do programming just like this during COVID. Obviously, everything's online, but some of you might have attended the previous lunch breaks I did in the end of 2020 on tree planting. Um, People really seemed to like the bite-sized lessons, so I was kind of hoping to keep that going and was hoping to do this a lot sooner, but finally got around to a tech series. So all this week we're going to be talking about programs that I consider to be useful for forest owners, and I'll be showing today's and tomorrow's, but we'll have a few speakers talking about relevant programs to their work the rest of the week after that. So just to get started and jump right, well, I guess I should take care of a couple housekeeping things first. If this is your first webinar with WSU, I will say you're welcome to type in questions into the chat box. You will be muted and you won't be able to share your camera. But you can type away into the chat box any questions you have, and I'll try to get to them as soon as possible. I will say that if you're going to type a question into the chat box, when you open it up, and under the To panel, there's an option to click all panelists and attendees. And I recommend you do that just so everybody else can see the question that you're asking, because more often than not, someone else is thinking it too. So I already got a couple. Ruth asked, you can't attend tomorrow's meeting. That's totally fine. All of these are going to be recorded, so I will send those links out though probably next week. I'm going to do them all at once and upload them to YouTube, and then I'll send out those links. And Ken, yes, if we should be able to see me. No, I'm not sharing my camera right now, mostly because Google Earth takes up a lot of bandwidth, and I'm kind of just trying to play it safe. The last thing I want is to get booted and have you all get booted off and then have to reconnect. If that does happen, that's all you need to do. Just reconnect to the webinar, and I'll reconnect as soon as I can too. Hopefully, though, we can avoid that. So it is important to keep in mind that this is going to be recorded. Like I said, only got a half hour, trying to really keep it inside your lunch break. I will be willing to hang out, of course, a little bit longer and answer questions if anybody else is willing to. But this will be recorded, so if I'm moving kind of fast, don't worry. You'll be able to use that recording for reference in the future. So jumping right into it, Google Earth is a really, really useful program for some basic sort of monitoring and planning activities that you might do as a forest owner. So, forest professionals get trained on really intense and intricate GIS and expensive software. And I use some of that myself, but I'll say, quite frankly, a lot of the stuff that I do can be done on Google Earth, and Google Earth is way more user-friendly. So I really see this as, a top 3 programs that a forest owner should be familiar with and know how to use. It's great for making maps, but it's also great for keeping track of your activities and things that you do on the property. So obviously with a program, like any program, you've got to start. Here, I'm going to share my screen real quick by downloading it. Can everybody see my screen there? You should be able to. Good. So if you want to download Google Earth, all you got to do is go to google.com/earth. Take you to this website, and you're going to click on Earth versions. And it's going to give you 3 options. Now, I've not played around with these 2 very much. I think they're limited in what they can do, but you can get the Google Earth Pro now for free, which is really great, because I think even as I think maybe 5 years ago, something like that, you would have to pay about $15 a month for this. So it's really, really great that it's free now. You download it just like any other program. I'm not going to go through all of that. But once you open it, it'll open the software and it'll show you this. there's a lot of nice little tutorials here, which are maybe doing my job for you, but I know a lot of people like to have this spelled out to them in a little more detail, especially for forestry applications. So I'll just close out of that for now, but this is what you're going to see as soon as you open it, the big globe. A couple things right off the bat. You've got your tools up here on top, and I'll be going through a lot of these in a little more detail, particularly these three here. I'll go over that in a little bit. In the bottom left corner, Ken's saying my voice is fading. Maybe this will help. I'm going to bring my mic a little bit closer. Is that better? Let me know if it gets worse. Good, good. So in the bottom left here, you've got, these are the layers that they come with the program. I'll demonstrate those in a little bit. And here, these are the places that you save and the layers that you create. So anything that you're mapping on your property is going to be up here. It's kind of like your files. You get to organize them, name them, save them, stuff like that. There's a search bar. You can type in your address, easy way to find your property, or lots of other places anywhere on Earth, obviously. And then navigating this can be a little tricky, but once you get the hang of it, it's actually very smooth. So you can click on the globe and just kind of drag it around to see different places. When you do this, your orientation is going to get a little messed up just naturally. See, if you look over here, you can see where you are in reference to north. If you ever feel like you got turned upside down, all you have to do is click on that N there and it'll reorient you to north. You can also just hit the R button. I don't know why they picked R, maybe rotate, but that will also orient you to north. You can use these to move around and this bar here to zoom in and out. If you have a scroll bar on your mouse, you can use that to zoom as well. Or again, you can grab and kind of pull your way through the globe or use the arrow keys. Also works. So lots of different options there, whatever works best for you. It can be a little bit difficult on a laptop. I really like having a mouse and being able to scroll to zoom. So let's focus in on the Olympia area, demonstrate some of those layers that are already in the program. So here's Olympia. So if we go over here and we just click on some of these, you can see there's roads, places. So they got some well-known places like there's Cap Forest, Evergreen. They got even some restaurants and grocery stores around. A lot of the stuff that you might find on Google Maps. I typically just keep all of these off with the exception maybe of roads. That can be kind of useful when you're mapping, but it gets very busy very quickly. So I generally just turn these off. Then you got to navigate to your property. I'm going to use a sample property, but anybody that wants to find their own, like I said, you can just type it into your address, or if you're able to just find it, I know mine is going to be right here. This is what we're going to use for an example today. And again, anytime you feel like you're disoriented, you're probably right. Just hit the R button or click on this little N. When you zoom in, it actually tilts the camera angle a little bit. And I never figure out why. And there's actually a way to turn that off, and I can show you too. But I'm not exactly sure what the advantage of that is, but it is built into the program. So just know that that R button is going to be your best friend. So like I said, I'm going to talk about these three key features. This is going to be how you add features to your map here. And we're going to look at points, lines, and polygons. That's the same as any expensive GIS software. They're all based off of those three key features: points, lines, and polygons. And they have different applications too. So we'll go over each of those. Now, to create a point, you just click on this little thumbtack here, and it'll say add place mark. Yeah, Josh mentioned the tilting camera can help you see topography better, which is true. Google Earth actually does allow you to see topography. It didn't used to before, but it can help you in that scenario as well. It's really interesting, but it can also make you a little dizzy. So when you're putting a place mark on, as soon as you hit that button, it's going to bring up this little menu here and then the place mark itself. And so you could just click on that and drag it wherever you want on the property. So I like to use place marks, points for singular observations. So something, an example of that might be a dead tree. You can just title it dead tree. You're not sure what killed it. You suspect maybe root rot. So in the notes, you write root rot suspected. And then you could add in some other notes. Say it's a Doug fir that died, and it's about 28 inches in diameter. So great place to kind of keep track of some of those notes. You can even add a picture to it. So I'll just go ahead and add a sort of random picture. You're going to see how disorganized all my files are here. I got lots of dead trees. Well, here's a root rot picture. So let's say you think it's root rot. You went out there, you took a picture, you come back to your computer, you upload this picture and the point and the rough location. So we just call it there. And now that you uploaded your picture, when you click on it, it'll actually bring that picture up, which is really cool. And it's a great way to visualize all the things that you're thinking about on your property. And you can even go a step further. So after you've created the point, anytime you want to edit it, you just right click it on the feature over here, click properties, and you can change the location. Again, you in the same spot as you were before. You can also change the label. So let's say it's a dead tree. We want to make it look, red. And that indicates that it's a dead tree or something that you're maybe mildly concerned about. And that's a great way to kind of denote things inside of all the observations you might be making on the property. And you can even change the color of the text or the color, or manually change the color of the icon to whatever you want. So there's a lot of customizing that you can do here. But we'll just leave it like that for now. And of course, you can do ones for all kinds of things. Say you got a snag over here, like a really nice snag that you're proud of, and you don't want that to be red. You want it to be green because you're excited about it. So there you go. And make some notes. Say it's a 40-foot hemlock snag, 30 inches in diameter. Just some ideas. So these points, like I said, it's probably the most versatile feature. It could be just about anything you want. You could mark maybe an English holly tree out there that you want to make sure you remember where it's at and go out and cut it in the winter. It's a great way to keep track of those kinds of things. So one of the things I want to stop and do before we go any further is make sure that you're saving these features. So these features are already saved, but sometimes when you make them, and I can never really figure out why, it'll be in the temporary places. Now, if I were to exit out right now, this would disappear. So you want to move it up to the My Places section. And you can even go further if you like to be really organized. You right click on My Places and you can add a folder. So we'll just call this sample project. And then you can click on both of these and drag them into that project. And you could go even further and say, these are observations. And you can get really organized so that your observations are inside of the larger project, and you can click those on or off at the same time, actually. So, oops, these have to be moved into the observations. There we go. So you can click those on or off at the same time, and everything stays nice and organized that way. But that's everybody's different in how they organize stuff. I like to be that way. I rarely do it in execution, which I'm sure is the case for a lot of people. So that's our points. Moving on, we're going to go jump over to lines next, or paths. So you want to add a path, and of course, a path is just a series of points that are connected. So it's going to open up the same menu, and let's say we have a wetland trail that we want to mark. And realistically, paths are mostly going to be used for trails, keeping track of trails, or planned trails. I'm sure you can find other uses, but I think that's going to be kind of the primary one. So let's say the path starts, and keep in mind when this menu is open, you can navigate just like you can't grab and pull like you could before, but you can use this and you can use the arrows. Oops. And of course, if you have the scroll bar, you can zoom in and out. So it gets a little bit tricky there. But let's say the path starts here. Every click is a point. And you're just adding points. And you can add them across like single clicks. You can also, let's say you wanted to hold it down and then draw a circle like that and make it nice and smooth. It'll add hundreds of points. If at any point you made a bad point, you can hit the backspace and go backwards and delete it. Hold it down, you can go all the way back around. You can also adjust points once they've been laid. And if you wanted to add a point between here and here, you could click this, and then, or sorry, I actually added one between the other 2 points. But you can go and add more points in between lines as well. So there's lots of editing to be allowed. Oh, Linnea asked if those points indicated latitude and longitude. I can open that back up in a second, but they do. They will show you the lat and long for all of that. And you can actually type in the latitude and longitude if you know those of the point out there. So you got those while you're out and on the ground, and then you brought that latitude and longitude back. You can just type that in and it'll find it. So it's really nice. So let's say this is our path. This is our wetland trail. And just like that, you've got a nice little path. Kind of sloppy and it doesn't really connect, but it's just an example. So there's some other cool features. Again, you can customize this. It's a wetland trail. Let's make it blue. You can make it wider or thicker, the line thicker. You can also, if you wanted to, for whatever reason, make the line, somewhat transparent. That's a lot more useful in polygons, but can be useful in lines, I suppose. Another cool thing is measurements. It'll automatically tell you how long this is, and you can pick your unit of measurement. So you can have a whole series of trails connected and recorded on here. As well as notes, you can also add images here too. So pretty awesome feature. Then one other thing, and this is something I actually just found out very recently, I think it's the coolest thing about the paths feature, is you can show the elevation profile. And it's actually pretty accurate. So you can just scroll along here, any point in the path, and you can see its elevation above sea level. And you can also get average slope, and well, you can get the slope at any point in the line as well, and the distance of the line. So really neat thing for anybody that wants to get into some serious trail building on their property. You could plan paths out based on the elevation and grade change. So let's say we wanted to add another quick folder for trails. Actually, we didn't want that to be under observations, so there we go. And we drag that into trails. And you can turn it on and off just like anything else. So Kevin asked, suggestions for getting the best GPS data under variable tree cover to upload to Google Earth, save for trails or plot boundaries. Yeah, it's difficult. With anything using your phone, you're always there's gonna be a margin of error of like 20 to 30 feet on any point or line you make. So it can be kind of difficult, but even Google Maps will give you a latitude and longitude. So it's, any mapping feature should be able to give you those. They just might not be, there's a margin of error on it. Kelly asks, can you use this process to create plot areas to see how different treatment works? Yes, absolutely. And that's the next step I was going to show, is creating a polygon. So this is going to be obviously probably the most useful tool for forest owners. One of the first things you're going to do when you make a map is map out the actual property boundaries. So let's do that really quick. Call it property boundaries. I always like to have my property boundaries be in red. And I know the property boundaries here, and it will be important that you know yours, right? Obviously, and hopefully they're not anything crazy that makes it really difficult. But it's not terribly important that this be super, super accurate, right? This is going to be mostly for your uses. You're not going to make a map that a logger is going to use, right? You wouldn't want a logger to base his judgment based off of a map that you created here and then cut a neighbor's tree down. That could be really rough. So this is mostly for your planning uses. Don't worry about getting too detailed. So I know that the property goes along the road here, cuts over here. So this is an important part. Once you hit that third line, your polygon is always going to connect your first line, your first dot and your last dot. And as you go, it's going to continue to fill in the space. And what can be difficult is when, so I know the property cuts up to here, but then it cuts back up here, and now I can't see it. So it's really what I like to do. Well, really what I like to do is just click on this area tab and just make it outlined so that you can actually see what you're doing. And so the property cuts right about there. Might not be the most accurate thing, but this is a pretty decent property boundary. I'll make that line just a little thicker, and we can call it there. And like I said, this is going to be for your uses, not necessarily legal uses. So don't get too hung up on the whole accuracy thing. Dan Gunderson asked, can you make a trail in real time using iPhone? I don't know if you can do that because there is a Google Earth mobile app. And I just haven't used it very much. So it could be possible that you could do it there. I know you can do it on programs like Avenza, but they require maps, like PDF maps that are already georeferenced, and you kind of have to create those in those more advanced GIS software. So that can be a little bit difficult. So Ken asks, can you please show how to fix an error you can now see on this map? So you're asking if, let's say, open up the property boundaries things for edits again. Remember, anytime you want to re-edit something, all you got to do is find it over here, right click and hit properties. And then that's going to bring up all those points you made. So let's say the property actually cuts over here. Instead, you can just click on those points and drag them back over. Or you can click on a point and then get rid of it if you wanted. And then you can add it back too. Okay, so I'm getting a little short on time. I'm going to power through and hopefully leave time for questions at the end. So there's our property boundaries. The other thing I really want to show with the polygon is mapping a stand. And if you don't, if you're not familiar with that term, a forest stand is just a, well, it's a chunk of forest within a larger forest that has the same characteristics and composition. So we've got our whole property here, right? And it's about 60 acres of forest. I just happen to know that. But you can see here, even without being on the ground, there's a different texture. Oops, there's a different texture going on here. Clearly, there's something else. This is probably its own stand with its own characteristics. Maybe is younger, has more trees per acre, or different composition of trees entirely. So let's just take a stab at mapping that like we would the property boundaries. you can see on this edge, it gets a little tricky. It's hard to see exactly where it is. You're kind of just guessing, and that's totally fine. And of course, you all will have the benefit of having spent significant amount of time on your property, hopefully, and knowing what it looks like on the ground compared to the air. But let's just call this stand A, and we'll leave it like that for now, although I will change the lines to white just so we're not confusing it with the property lines. And you can see, just go back and adjust things a little bit. And there's our first stand. You know, like I said, sometimes along the edge here, it's kind of hard to tell. You'll find it might be difficult from the air to be certain. So there's a really nifty tool that was not probably at all made for this purpose, but for forest owners, it's really, really helpful. You can click on this little clock and it'll show you historical images of the property. Most of these around here go back to about sometime in the 80s or early 90s. Obviously, this is the oldest picture for this property. Not terribly useful. It just doesn't have the grain to be useful. Jump up to the next one to 1990. Clearly, you can see that this stand looks a lot more like the rest of the forest at this time. So we're getting to before whatever was done to the property. Jump ahead again, and you can clearly see that this chunk of the property was forested. So if you're new to your property at all, anytime inside the last 2 decades, this tool can be really helpful to learn about what's been done before you. So I know that area was harvested. It's younger. It's got a different composition. Looks like a lot of big leaf maple and hardwoods came back. So they probably didn't do the greatest job reforesting. But this can be really good to ground truth, or not really ground truth, but check yourself on stand boundaries. And you could theoretically, instead of drawing your boundary first, you could go back. You can draw a boundary here and then bring it forward to present day. And that works just as well. You'll notice that as you click through these and you have a stand boundary in place, you can see the lines are going to change a little bit, right? Look between these. If you look at the left boundary here and go back to the previous one, you can see the forest edge is jumping a little bit. And that's just kind of the accuracy of the projection when they do these things. They can't be perfect. So it's usually pretty negligible though. But you get to this one and we're spot on. So really useful tool, both to learn about your property, but also map a little more accurately. So let's go ahead. We got like 3 minutes left. I'm going to kind of blast through this just so I can show you how to print all of these too. Oops, not a place mark. So let's just call this one stand A or stand B. We'll call it, you know what, we're just going to make the rest of the forest property stand B, even though that's definitely not accurate. So I'll just go up here. Definitely kind of sloppy, so sorry about that. And what I like to do too is not just make the lines different, but make the area different for each stand so that they really stick out. So we'll make this one green. We'll say it's filled and outlined, and we'll make it about 50% transparent so that we can see through it a little bit. We'll go back and do the same thing to stand A, but with a different color. Let's call it yellow. Nice and bright, 50%. Clearly not the best line work there, but we won't worry about that right now. So I'm going to add one more folder, and it's just going to be called boundaries. Oops. Spelled that wrong, but whatever. We'll do this. We'll put these into the boundaries folder, and we're going to turn the rest of these off. Oh, I did that. So now we've got our stand map. Let's look at how we can print this out very quickly. And it's really, really easy. So there's this little button here and it's save image, but it creates a little map making feature. So you can title your map, just call it stand map. You can add a description if you want. We won't here. And then you have your legend as well. And you can actually go in and edit this. Say you don't want the property boundary on there. Say you do, you're going back and forth, changing your mind. You could also decide that you want those in, and then you can just hit refresh from view, and that'll add those back. So pretty straightforward map making feature. And then all you have to do is click save image, pick a place to save it, and you're all set. Here, I'll bring it up. And you've got a perfect stand map for throwing into your plan. Let's bring it back. So I think we had a couple questions, and I'll get to those really quickly. I know I blasted through this very quickly, and it's now 12:30. There's just so much to cover in here, and there's so many opportunities. It's really neat. Somebody asked, and I meant to show this, on a polygon, can you get area? And the answer is yes. When you open it up, so we're looking at the property boundaries now. If you go over to measurements, you can look at area. The default is square miles, but you can go over to acres and see that the property is about 83 acres or so. So that's a really cool feature as well. And again, polygons don't have to be stands. They can be anything. Someone said something about setting up different treatments. That's a perfect use of polygons. So I'm going to hang out, and I'll answer more questions. That was kind of the long and short of it, though, and hopefully that was helpful for those of you that have to take off. So let's look back and see when the last picture or question I answered was. Okay, so Bob asked, any way to merge with GPS mapping or with some of the DNR mapping tools? Not particularly. The problem is that the maps that you create, when you save here, if you save it as an image, those images are not geo-referenced. So that means that you can't apply them to other geospatial softwares. Sometimes with, like something like ArcMap or QGIS, some of those more expensive GIS softwares, when they produce a map, if you put that map in any other software, it's going to be geo-referenced. It's going to know exactly where it is on the Earth. And they don't do that for Google Earth yet, which is unfortunate because that means you can't use maps that you create in here for really cool apps like Avenza, if anybody's used those. I'm hoping that they change that. I really, really hope that they change that. But it's who's to say? They don't necessarily design these for forest owners. Richard asked, what is the date of images and get historical data? Well, when you're looking at the historical images, it will tell you, oops, I'll just exit out of the image thing. It tells you right up top the day or the month and year, at least, that the photos were taken. And I don't know about getting any other data. I don't think that you can necessarily. Or what kind of data you're talking about. Maybe you can type that into the chat box to clarify. But it will tell you what month and year. And obviously, as time went on, they took a lot more pictures, and they do it at least once a year at this point. So let's see. Anne asked, how can you print once you've got your stands? Hopefully I've answered that for you, Anne. Richard asked, is the image we are looking at the max enlargement? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Richard. I'm assuming you're asking if you can zoom down a little closer, and you definitely can. I will go as far as I can here. At a certain point, it's not helpful to zoom anymore, but you can definitely get pretty granular with it, which is neat. Tom asked how to get area from a polygon. I answered that. Oh, Todd asked, yeah, can it be saved as a geo-reference PDF to be used for Avenza? No, unfortunately, no, not yet. Which is weird, though, because if you have Avenza and you create paths or points or polygons on Avenza, you can bring those back and they will upload to Google Earth, I've learned, but you can't do it the other way around yet, which is, yeah, really frustrating. Anne asks, can you print just the map area, not the surrounding property? No, unfortunately, that would be something for more of a more advanced GIS software where you could just take the boundary and then cut everything else out. That would be really cool. But right now, this is the best we can do with Google Earth. Jim asks, is there a way to know the scale of the map? Yes, there is. And I'm surprised actually that it's not. Oh, here we go. Scale legend. So you just have to hit view and you have to check that box, but it will show you right down here. And I know when you print, anytime you print it out, it will show you automatically put a scale bar in. But you can include that as well in the basic view. All right, keep going here. So Emily asked if we could draw 40-foot contour intervals, can you use G to draw lines and fine tune small elevation gradations? It would get really complicated. So basically she's asking if you can use the line feature to create contours, and you absolutely could. It would be a lot of work. It'd be a lot easier to just take that data that already exists and put it into Google Earth, but I don't believe you can do that yet. I just haven't tried anything like that, but it's possible that you could take like USGS topo data and put it into Google Earth without having to do that all manually. So I hope that answers your question a little bit. Linda asks, I've seen some maps with the waterways highlighted, some soil composition. Is that available? Not necessarily. I know, for instance, that some of the larger bodies of water, here I'll show you, are available in the default layers that come with the program. And gosh, even so, this is Henderson Inlet, and that's not showing up. I wonder what they mean by water bodies then, if that's not showing up. Let's see. Yeah, so I guess there's some lakes that show up, but none of that data is available on its own. As you have to create it in your program or on your property or whatever area you're focusing on. We will talk in terms of soil composition. Tomorrow we will be talking about how to use the web soil survey, which is what you're referring to, where you can get a map that shows you the different soils across your property. And I think that's all the questions. If there's not any more, sorry for going a little bit over, but I appreciate y'all hanging on. Those of you that did, I hope this was informative, as quick as it was. And I really look forward to the rest of the week. Tomorrow we'll be talking about web soil survey, as I mentioned, and how to get soil maps for your property, as well as all kinds of soil information, really useful stuff. So I'll see you all tomorrow. And just another reminder that this is going to be recorded, and I will send those links out sometime next week. So if I did move a little too fast today, you can always go back and watch that again. So, all right, have a great day, everybody.